Welcome back, everyone. This is episode 35.
The 34. Yep, we just talked about it for 5 minutes, and it's 34.
We literally have the recording of us talking about what this...
The invisible countdown was impressive, Lars. That was one for the books.
Man,
we should absolutely include that in the YouTube clip. Make
like
us discussing which episode it is.
Okay, both you be quiet. I'm trying to do an intro here. Oh, man. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 34 of the Unlocked Podcast. 34, I repeat, of the Unlocked Podcast. I am Lars Johnson from Calgary, Alberta. I'm sitting here with two other fellas. Tone, lay it on us. Who are you? Where are you?
I am, wow.
Lay it on us.
Lay it on us, Tone.
Who are you?
Tony Hokinson.
Where did you come from?
Minneapolis, Bloomington area, Minnesota.
From the sauna. And
it's getting quite hot today here. You know, we're up to 80 degrees in the great state of Minnesota.
That means nothing to Canada.
We got plenty of smoke coming from you once again. It's like an annual occurrence of Canada just lights on fire.
I think that's the cigars from our last golf trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Chad Lingefeld from Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Carolinas is a collective, North and South Carolina.
North Carolina is so far south, it makes no sense.
Well, it's
just
north
throwing
of
that
South
out
Carolina.
there.
It's north of South Carolina. It's the Carolinas split. It's
man.
There's probably history somewhere around there.
Thankfully, this isn't a podcast about geography
because we would be terrible.
This would be awful.
Tony, I got to spend a couple of days. Oh, my microphone stand just fell apart. I got to spend a couple of days with Lars and 15 of his closest Canadian friends.
You're welcome.
That had to be quite the experience.
I guess it would be 14. Anyway, the point of it is...
What happened to the 15th?
I think I was the 15th.
He was 15.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So a Southerner, because I don't have a Southern accent, but a Southerner from...
No, not at all. I
from
would never
America,
accuse you of sounding like a Southerner.
Hanging out with 15 folks from the great state of Canada, and it was hilarious. A new appreciation for the ever so polite Canadians that Lars somehow missed out on. But these guys, it was funny, and then also to get a lot of history and stories are about Lars that he doesn't typically share. So the stories that are not so flattering about him.
Sounds like we should have a whole episode about that, but maybe
there are a few bumps along the way, boys. I know you just see this polished, refined basic.
But it was funny to me because we all were speaking English, but there is American English and then there's Canadian English.
I would argue neither of you were speaking English. None of you were.
Okay, whatever.
There's American, and then there's English.
American, and then there's Southern American. But it was funny, the references, they were talking, and I could understand the words that they were saying, but I had no context to the references that they meant. And so there was a lot of translations happening. It was fun. It was a great time. It was a great time. They were all very hospitable and friendly. I did not meet any rude folks on the trip at all.
It was a little bit of a... So I think Chad was preparing for a little more structure and organization. Things like, where are we golfing? Where are we staying? Who are we staying with? What time do we play? Those kind of things. Yeah. None of that. None of that to be found. Just show up, keep your mouth shut, and we'll just jump on the bus and go wherever it takes us. Yeah. So it was, it was a learning experience. Chad and I learned once we got there, we were actually sharing a room for 5 days.
Yeah. I was actually just surprised that we had a place to stay based off of my previous experience watching Lars travel from place to place and not having a hotel when he shows up or an airline ticket, something like that. I was impressed that we got there and that we actually had a bed to sleep in. So
airline ticket was a mistake.
What he didn't tell you is he was supposed to be in a separate room and he just forgot to book his room. So that's why he was staying with you. That's kind of his MO.
That was, I did that once in Texas, and Tony will never.
You've done it like 3 times.
I've done it 3 times in Texas.
This is a pattern, not an event.
I like to go with the flow.
Yeah.
And occasionally that means I'm homeless and need somewhere to stay. And Tony, you're my guy. Tony, can I stay with you? Oh, golly gosh. Tony. Okay, yeah. Tony, you sleep on the floor? Tony. All right, fine.
So career moments.
Career moments, right. So a little recap. We just finished a episode. That was number 33. We just finished. And we were talking about our top 5 career moments and really the context behind them, kind of the learning lessons and how that's impacted our careers going forward. I think there's some really, really interesting stuff. I know Chad made a reference of how he changed his mindset from kind of a command and control type of manager to an intention-based and trying to add autonomy back into the business for everyone that was there. I think Tony added to that. I think it was, Tony, your top one was very similar and kind of went hand in hand with that.
Yes, all about just having purpose and autonomy in what you're doing for your career.
Right. And then I talked about actually joining up with you guys, almost a decade ago, and how this all started. And really, it was a way to set some benchmarks. And it started with some vulnerability between us, and we really just kind of opened the Komodo and said, "This is, this is how we're doing in business." You haven't heard that term before? Open the Komodo. It's not a literal term for anyone that was curious, but
made me think of a Komodo dragon, but.
Okay. That's not the reference. It doesn't matter. But what it really did was it opened our eyes and realized that collaborating and with a group, we were much more effective because we all brought little different strengths. And that has really impacted our business 5 years down the road and going forward. I think, Chad, also you talked about your non-industry specific peer group and how that really kind of refocused you on financials and how important that was. I referenced my non-industry specific peer group that I sit in. Tony, you talked about metrics, I believe, right? That was number 2. See, I'm following the agenda, but you didn't add yours. So now you're really testing my
number
memory.
2 was the same as yours, which was the peer group. So we had a lot of peer group conversation last episode.
Yes. And just the benefits of it. So we are jumping into the second half of that episode now. And I think number 3, Tony, you were up. Oh, Chad, you have something you want to add first?
I do.
No, I'm just confused as how we're in a second part of a top 5. Trying to figure out how you split 5s.
We're each doing a top 5. So this means you got 3 left. Chad.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I tried to go with, doesn't matter. Tony, lay it on us. Number 3 most impactful moment.
Yeah. So I started in our business about 2014. 2017, we were kind of at a capacity. We had about 17 employees. We had only added a handful since I started working. We had some, lost some.
Messy middle.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where that is.
In our previous episode, Chad mentioned the 17 employee marker. You mentioned it in relation to turn the ship around. In the early part of 17, we made some pretty key hires. Actually, we hired, I think, like 10 people in 2017. But specifically, we hired a sales role and an operations role. We had salespeople previously, none that had worked out. But we hired a salesperson who's still with us today. And then also an operations person who is also still with us today. And for me, it was very impactful because I was able to actually have somebody that I trusted to delegate to. And that was people say that you need to be good at delegating, and I am not the best at delegating, but a big component of that was having somebody that I could trust to then delegate to, specifically in those key areas, because that was where I was spending most of my time dealing with operational stuff and then sales stuff. So having 2 people to delegate really leapfrogged us forward into growth mode. And to me, getting over that hurdle of finally delegating to someone helped with future delegation and just being able to have me focus on other things to help grow our business.
So there's a lot to unpack there, Tony, because I think a lot of people would resonate with what you just said. And to expand on a little bit more is, and I don't want to go culture index because that was like episode 7. But we've talked a lot about the autonomy and social ability and all those things. And one of those key character traits there is the fact that you are very hesitant to trust other people to do something because it could come back and bite you. Or if you've had a bad experience one time trusting somebody and it went poorly, then that's a permanent fixture. I don't want to try that again.
Yeah, for me, I think it was more I like things done a specific way, and I wasn't going to.
I've never noticed.
You're very quirky, right?
Yeah.
But here's the reason why I want to dive into it, because the people that are listening to this, folks that may be in a similar position of, okay, I've hit this point, this ceiling, and I need to delegate. I know I need to delegate, but also I don't feel like I have anybody that I can trust to delegate these things to.
Level management don't have.
Right? And because if you look at Lars specifically, he will easily delegate something to someone, and if it goes poorly, then he will try again. Like it's an easy retraction. Like that's an easy adaptation in that process. And so you're going to be less, if it goes bad one time, it's going to be really difficult for you to let it go again, or to try to delegate it to another person. Is that fair, Tony?
Yeah, the interesting thing here was these were two employees that did not work for us previously. So they were new employees. They both had industry experience, which is what I think really helped. So they were able to jump in and provide new value to the business. So at that point in our growth mode, having somebody that had some industry experience was very beneficial, because again, I trusted them to know the basics, and then I could assist in other areas.
So, Tone, the obvious question here: where'd you find them? Did you throw a lot ad on LinkedIn, or
interestingly, both different spots? I wouldn't say that they were good or bad or indifferent. One was on Indeed, so just dumb luck. Guy was moving up here from a different state and saw our ad, and flew up here,
makes sense.
Visited with us. I do think that I don't know how you attract those types of people, but finding people that are, you always hear, finding somebody on Indeed, typically that means they're looking for a job. And a lot of times people are looking for a job, there's a reason they're looking for a job. In this case, it was a logical reason. The person was moving, right? They didn't get fired. They were looking to move states for, not for employee performance reasons, but just because they were moving. So that is a small tip I would say, is finding people that are moving into your state is a good one. But anyways, Indeed. And then the second one was through a recruiter. Ironically.
Oh, really?
Funny enough, we had hired someone through a recruiter and they didn't work. So we got our credit. We hired someone again and they didn't work. So we got another credit. And the third time was a charm. Funny enough, the first two positions, one was a tech, didn't work. Hired a salesperson, he didn't work. Hired and then an operations person. So I'm not saying recruiters work all the time, but this specific one, the recruiter, we stayed in contact with them. They knew we were looking for someone to help from an operations standpoint, and found us a good fit. So,
but that is, so both of those people that you were able to delegate those responsibilities to had some level of knowledge, or somehow convinced you that they had some experience that would make you better, or relieve some of that responsibility from you without minimizing the risk.
Yeah. The interesting thing too was sales was something I thoroughly enjoyed. Like that's why that was hard to give up. I liked going out and talking with customers and helping them solve their problems. I just realized that I was a bottleneck because I would go out and meet with them, and then I'd come back to the office and go do a million other things, and I would never get them a quote. It's kind of hard to sell to somebody when you don't send them a quote. So as much as I loved doing it, I realized I needed to hire somebody else that could do it, so that I could, customers would get taken care of better, and then we'd sell more. And we did. I remember right away, I think he doubled my sales in 1 year just because he was actually able to focus on it. So, and I think that's people so often think, well, someone's not going to do as good as me. Someone's not going to do as good as me. But if someone is focused on it, they will, because that's their only job. And they may not do it the same way as you, but they're going to do it their own way. And it's going to free you. It's going to let them do better at what you were doing because they're focused on it. B, it's going to free you up to do other things and help your business grow.
It's focused energy.
Yes.
I want to share a quick short story, and then we'll get back to the thing. I was talking with someone the other day, and they were showing me their garden, which that's probably an odd thing for both of you to hear that I was in somebody's garden. But they were walking me through all of their plants that they were growing, and they had a kiwi vine. It was really, really cool. I've never seen a kiwi vine before. I've eaten kiwi, obviously. But anyways, they had this huge arch, right, with just hundreds and hundreds of kiwi hanging on the fruit on the vines there.
I hope this is going somewhere.
And they were explaining to me how they've been working on it for years, and that it was they had been working to try to grow this thing, and it used to just take over the entire garden. Like the kiwi vines would just continue to grow. And they learned through talking with someone else that they had to prune off some of the expansion vines. So these little vines that would offshoot and go
focused growth
nowhere.
Yeah.
And but they were not producing as much kiwi. So then they started trimming it down and keeping it more confined space, and immediately they started popping more kiwis all over this vine. It's hard because this is in somebody's backyard. It's hard for me to convey how many kiwis are on this thing. I'm waiting on a picture because I didn't take a picture of it. But they're going to send me one. Anyways, point of it is the takeaway that I had from that, it just kind of clicked with me, was pruning back the distraction. And the explanation was, the plant, the vine, is got energy inside of it, and it's using that energy to divert out to new vines. Yeah. Once you clip it down and prune it, then it redirects. This is really key. It redirects that energy to the fruit producing vines, and it will produce more fruit. The fear that we have is trimming or pruning off those expansions because it might turn into something, but the more that you trim it down and let that focused energy go, it produces more fruit. And that's a really good analogy to what you were just saying, Tony, is because when you pruned off those things that were taking out your energy sources in different ways, and you gave it over to one person, and that's the only focus that they had, then it produced a better fruit.
That's a really good analogy. I like that.
Well, I'm glad it went somewhere for you,
Tony.
It
was
I knew that was coming.
Kiwis and gardens, and I was like, where are we going?
Chad, I've actually seen you in the garden lots. It's usually on the golf course. You're
okay.
Yeah, I've seen you hit lots of golf shots.
A little more time in other places besides the garden, typically the wood and the beach.
Lots of shots out of the garden playing golf with Chad. But it's actually, I'm reading the book right now. One of you probably referenced this actually, but I'm reading The One Thing right now. Did I that might have been the other group, I don't remember, but that's exactly talking about that. That's the focused energy, which is very challenging for me, of course, but
at any rate, hiring somebody to get out, like I know that's something that's hard for a lot of locksmith owners, is hiring somebody to get out of my own way but then focus my energy on something else was a really pivotal one for us. Within I think 2 years, 3 years. Now, 2 years from that time frame, we went from like 17 employees to 40 employees. So that there's no way that would have happened if I was just sitting there doing sales the whole time.
I think my number 3 is actually, again, tied into this. Now, we didn't plan this out, but they are kind of tied in. So I've got 3 names on there, 3 people that I've impacted. So one is Janelle Miller. So it was a young lady who's no longer with us, actually. Oh, that sounds wrong. She's alive. She's alive.
Just no longer with the company.
Just doesn't work with us. Yeah. Sorry, Janelle. I'm probably pretty safe to say she's not listening to this, but if she is, sorry about that. But Janelle joined us. So it was right after, we had got together. And I think I mentioned in the last episode, I was talking about
how you were spending too much time on financials.
Too much financials, exactly. And realized that to grow this business and get it to the next level, I had to take more of a leadership role and more of a high-level role. So Janelle came in, and she had an accounting background. So she wasn't a CPA, but she had a long-time background in accounting. And one of the first things she did that was impactful, and I know I talked to you guys about it, but before Janelle, we had like three revenue lines, and we had like 5 cost accounts. And she looked at this and she was like, how can you make any decisions out of this? And I was like, well, I don't know. I don't really, Yeah, I was like, well, you just carry the one intuition. Yeah, exactly. But she was like, no, I got to fix this. So she moved our income statement for our managerial statements. So meaning our internal stuff, not for taxes, but internal stuff. She added about 20, 30, 40, 50 different sub-accounts, because what it did was allow us to really dive into each line so you could see, just more specifics about our financials and where it went. And that was hugely impactful for us, because before it was just, cost of goods sold. Well, cost of goods sold was, 48%. Well, is that good? Is that bad? How do we make that better? And it's like, the eat an elephant thing. Well, we need to get more specific so we can then dive into, where we can aim our focus. So that was Janelle, and that was a big one because that allowed me to transition into a different focus. The next is Matt, and Matt was an interesting one because I knew Matt's cousin, and Matt's cousin was and still is a very good friend of mine, and he's just one of the most kind, genuine people I've ever met. That's why we get along so well. Just birds of a feather. But so I knew kind of the background. I knew his family upbringing, and Matt and I grew up in a small town together, and we played golf together. And he was just a really nice, genuine guy. And he was looking to get out of his current job. He was a golf pro, and it just wasn't, doing it for him. So he was a young guy, and he's like, I'm not really sure what my skills are. Like, I've been a golf pro my whole life, so I don't know how I can impact a doorknob company. I was like, well, I thought, this is a good guy. He's a nice guy. He's willing to learn. I know he's going to work hard. So we just hired him and had no idea what his role was going to be. Just hired him. 6 years later, 4 years later, maybe, he was our general manager. Now he's, one of my partners. But Matt really came in, and what he was good at is because he was such a caring person, he's an excellent manager, very operational focused, very excellent manager. People that know me, people and operations are not going to be my bread and butter.
Yeah.
So it's a very nice compliment for me. So I think, as Tony was talking about earlier, having that trust level, I knew him through another personal connection. He didn't have industry experience, but I knew the type of person he was, and then figured out what he was going to do after. Mm-hmm. So that's something I always highly recommend: is hire good people, and then figure out where they're going to go. Third one is, and this one's a little strange because he only worked with us for about 6 months, but the gentleman's name is Neeraj. Neeraj Kumar. He immigrated from India, was looking for a job. He's super grateful to us. We were the first company to give him an opportunity when he moved into Canada. But Neeraj was our procurement and purchasing person for about 6 months. But we had never really focused on purchasing, and quite honestly, don't have a clue how to do it. Still really kind of stink at it. But he was in procurement over back home when he moved to join us. And he started doing things like approaching manufacturers with open POs. Said, okay, we're going to guarantee we will buy this amount over this period of time, and we'd like this price on it. Because normally we would just, think, okay, we got to buy 100 of these to get a better price, and then sit them in the warehouse and eat up our cash flow and all that. Well, he started introducing these different procurement concepts that I'd never even heard of before. So it was hugely impactful because, again, something I knew nothing about. Second of all, he was an experienced guy in a completely different industry, but had kind of commonalities, but was able to come in and really teach me things and teach our team things. He didn't stick around. He moved on to a different role, but he left a lasting impression. So that was my third one.
That's
I think
awesome.
something you said there that's really important is when the right person walks in the door, hire them. We've done that a handful of times. I think some of our best hires have been we really either didn't have a position open, or somebody applied to a position and they were not a good fit for the position. But you could just tell they were an A player and just a good member of the team. So figure out a way to make it work for them. And typically that if they're a good person, they will find a home.
Especially if you can find that complement. If you can find somebody that's very good at what you're weak at, it has a huge impact. So.
What order are we in, by curiosity? Because I feel like we kind of jumped around a little bit. Who's supposed to go next?
Tony. Tony's number 4.
Okay.
Well, I'm just going by the fancy. What is this thing called? Agenda. There you go. That fancy agenda I made. So I think Tony, number 4 impact.
Interesting. Okay. Well, how about that? What was Chad's?
It doesn't matter. Just jump to number 4.
Chad number 3.
And Chad didn't do his number. He hasn't even
did I jump
yet.
over you?
You
All
just
right, then
jumped
Chad, you
over
go
it.
number 3. I don't know. I told
I
you
think
I
that's
don't
why
follow
he
the-
was subtly saying, "What order are we going here?" Because you just totally skipped me.
All right. No, I did.
It doesn't matter. We
Jump in here.
Yeah, because we have a few minutes left here before we're gonna.
Hey, Chad, what was one of your key moments here?
One
we have
of
no
these
idea
key
what number
moments
we're
that
on.
I don't know which number. As I was jotting things down here as a kid, my dad left home when I was 8 years old, and I had an interesting throughout my entire life have had different people, male father figures or what have you, that have jumped in and showed a high level of generosity and kindness, got me involved in things, taken me places that probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to otherwise. And that's always been really cool. And I always would compartmentalize that as I was an adult to things that happened as a kid and people that showed generosity to me. And as I've thought about it more and more over the years, it's actually transcended and continued on through my entire life, which has been really cool. And I think it's something that we probably as humans undervalue or underappreciate is the generosity of others. Tom Harris, which was with Assa Abloy for 40 some years, was one of those people in my professional career. We ran into Tom Harris when we were 5 people, 6 people, or 7 people, something like that, as a company at a local state trade show, locksmith trade show. And he just, for whatever reason, saw us and connected with us. And then the preceding number of years, he was very instrumental in bringing me to a table of conversation that otherwise I didn't have the credentials or the experience to be there. And he exposed me to a lot of other really smart people. You know, the fact that, again, this is kind of the precursor to the Ben connection for all 3 of us. The fact that Tom Harris was able to give me an opportunity with the MSc program and just with Assa Abloy as a whole, and then expose me to other business leaders and then learn from them. And he continues to do that to this day. I mean, he's retired now, but he still is. He lives in this in the area where we live, and so he regularly is looking and finding opportunities to give us an open door, effectively. And I think it's something that I undervalue or I take for granted sometimes, and then I have to check myself back on it. But the level of generosity that has been shown from mentors that come into my life and then ultimately have career-changing moments. So the fact that Tom Harris said, "Hey, I think you guys have something. Don't know what it is, but there's something there. Let's get you involved in this program." And then once we got involved in the program and saw a little bit of success, then he says, "Okay, I think you have an opportunity for this." And he helps guide to this. And then just even the side conversations that we would have with somebody like that he would say, "Have you thought of this industry or this opportunity, or what are you doing about hiring these types of people?" And it would just kind of send me down direction. And going back to, I don't remember if it was in this episode or the last episode, Lars, where you said with no really direct benefit on his part. And
he wanted nothing out of it. He was only doing it to help. No expectation in return. And it's amazing. Yeah.
Man, I'm really like thankful for that for my entire life, because there's been people that have done that since I was 8, 9 years old, but then to have that in my career as well. There was a guy that I used to hang around quite some time, and he used to have a term or a statement that he would say all the time that would give us an opportunity to be generous on every occasion. And it's something I think about quite frequently is, what are we doing? What position am I in right now that then I can do the same type of thing for other folks? So I've had people that have been generous, not giving me dollars per se, but giving me opportunities to do something. It's up to me what I do with it at that point, but bringing me into a situation, and then from that, how do you perform? And then my question is, how am I doing that at this stage in my life with the next generation or with other people, either in our organization, outside of our organization, outside of maybe in other industries or other organizations as well. So those have been like significantly impactful career moments for me, because outside of that, to a point, like where would we be? What situation would we be in at this point in life?
Yeah,
So,
even saying, the career moment is probably even misleaded. Like, it's obviously had a kind of a profound personal impact on you as well, right? And that's, just the saying is, and I'm a true believer in good things happen to good people, right? It's you do something with nothing in return, and somehow it makes its way back to pay you back.
It was really cool. And I don't remember if I shared this on this podcast or not, but 2 years ago at our awards banquet, one of the things that we introduced was a Loc-Doc Icon Award. So it's presented to somebody outside of our organization that has had a significant impact. And so we were able to present that award to Tom Harris, and we actually had he and his wife there in attendance. And I didn't actually look at him when I was presenting it to him, but the photographs and the videos that I saw afterwards, it was one of the top career moments for me, was to be able to then present somebody publicly back with an award saying, thank you for the opportunities that you've helped provide us with.
Really cool.
Tony, that's not an easy one to follow up with.
No, certainly not going to be able to top that one. I'm not even going to try. Not even going to try. So my career moments have kind of a story to them, because the next one is one that's really unlocked our growth potential, but it definitely wouldn't have been able to happen if it wasn't for the other ones. So obviously, if I didn't come work here, I wouldn't be able to do this. But in the fall of 2017, we did our first acquisition of Minneapolis Lock and Key. And that really led to a series of other acquisitions. And actually, as I was preparing for this, I realized we haven't done one in like 6 years. So I'm getting a little antsy. But when we acquired that business, we had no idea what we were doing with an acquisition. But we kind of I kind of said, we're going to do this and we're going to figure it out along the way. But that wouldn't have been possible had I not made those 2 hires I previously mentioned. And then in the previous podcast, had I not joined the MSC peer group. I remember in one of my first or second MSC conferences, I listened to Rob Watson give a breakout session on acquisitions and growing through acquisitions. So I knew that he had done acquisitions. And then at the time too, I had known Ken Kupferman, who had done a bunch of acquisitions. So when this opportunity presented itself, I was immediately on the phone asking them a million questions and trying to learn as much as possible from them on acquisitions, which for me made it a less risky move, because I knew that there was some support there and trying to figure it out. But those other moments of joining those conferences, it wouldn't have pushed me to doing this type of a thing. But then once we did one acquisition, we realized, we learned a lot from it, and then we've done a couple more since then, and also learned from those acquisitions to now, when it comes to growing our business through acquisition, I feel like we're in a really good spot and we know how to do it better. But I think a lesson that I had from that is not being afraid to fail because you learn from that. And I wouldn't say it was a failure. It's been a great acquisition, but there's certainly things in our acquisitions that we could have done a lot differently. But yeah, that was a pivotal moment for us is in our growth trajectory. It kind of unlocked
first acquisition. Yeah. And that was one of mine as well. I'd looked at the first acquisition and I look back and I almost laugh, and you're probably the same tone as, how much detail, and having that finance background, accounting background, like everything like was so important, and diving down. And now it's like, a little less, it's more of a shotgun pattern than a rifle. At least it is for me.
Interesting thing is when I looked at that acquisition, and I think I've said the word acquisition now about 25 times in the last 2 minutes.
Cadence.
But when I looked at that is all I was focused on, was do the finances work? I wasn't thinking about all that other operational stuff. And that is what we have. I've said this before on the podcast. I was just like, oh yeah, this will work financially and we'll figure this out. And then we had no plan, and we didn't, it was,
everything's on
we
paper?
made it through it. Now as we're meeting with companies, talking to them about what that sort of acquisition would look like, I'm very much so less concerned on, and I even tell them this. I'm not concerned about the finances. We can make that work. I'm concerned of, will this work for you? Will this work for me? Will this work for your employees? And if that doesn't work, I don't even care about how much revenue you do. I care about how the businesses are going to merge together. And that's something I learned through a series of acquisitions. And again, wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for doing that first one. So to me, that was a pretty big moment for us, and something we learned a lot from, and helped make our business what it is today.
Yeah, that's really cool, and that hits home. I just think of the same thing as a first acquisition. I know, Chad, you guys have done a couple as well, and the first one's always a little, we got to get pretty specific. It's a lot of money. You got to figure that out, and then by the second or third, it's like, well, that part's kind of secondary. Can we make this work?
Yeah. How do we weave it into our operations
on the soft side? Yeah. Now, Chad, do you want to follow this order? Should I go again, or do you want to just
I think you should go, because I'm so intrigued by what this Lars 4 is and the gibberish that you just typed on the screen. I am excited to understand what in the heck you were getting ready to say.
I think my hand was not on the right row of keys.
Why I'm excited to understand what you're about to say.
Jipica Church. How do you guys not know what that is? That was the old Egyptian ruler, Jipica Church.
Oh my gosh.
So this one, I'm going a different direction. I've talked a lot about people and how impactful that's been on me, and the kind of the exposure I've had to others. This is specifically, I'm talking about a win in business. So it's actually a sale that we made. And a Jipica Jarch is actually a person that was involved in this. But there was a big project downtown that was, at the time, the largest locksmith RFP in our area that anyone had ever heard of. It was $1 million or $1.5 million. But when we were going through the RFP, Jipica Jarch is supposed to say Jeff Harch.
Oh, okay.
That's what that is.
Close. Just got that.
I got a P and a J in there. I don't know how that works into. I guess it doesn't matter. But years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, I met Jeff, and Jeff was widely known as kind of the top salesperson in our industry. And he was an old school guy, did things the right way, very, very high attention to detail. But he also taught me that, people will pay for value. Mm-hmm. If you bring something to the situation, people will pay for that. Our industry, when I was first in it was like, okay, so we got to price it at this, and we got to be tight. And it was price, right? The first RFP we did, I spent 90% of the time on the financial metrics, trying to figure out, okay, how do we price this and how do we do all this? Now it's the flip side, where I'm spending way less time on the financials. Like realistically, it's probably 99% on the guts of the RFPs and 1% on the financials, because Jeff taught me, if you can lead with the value, pricing is secondary. So the Bankers Hall $1 million or $1.5 million was the first RFP that we didn't go in trying to be a cost leader. I spent a lot of time describing our team and all the intrinsic things that we bring to a customer. The data management, the expertise, the level of service, the dedicated people that will be with their team, and really tried to paint the whole picture. So spent a lot of time on that. And this was something that Jeff had, taught me. And I remember I went on a sales call with him once, and we went in there, and the customer was talking about what they were needing. And I, about 5 minutes in, I kind of looked at Jeff and I was like, do you think this is like an X4 kind of thing? And he just kind of, gave me the stop sign, and he was like, just hold on and just let the customer keep talking. And it changed my mindset, because Jeff started then, probing, well, how about this? How about that? So it went from a 300 cylinder rekey project to, 800 cylinders and lock sets and a service contract and door hardware and automatics. Like, it turned into this massive thing, which I think a lot of people in our industry are kind of scared of. Mm-hmm. because, well, they asked for keys, so we're going to give them keys.
Mm-hmm.
But this whole process made me realize that what they're asking for is a solution. They're asking for someone to take, the problems off their plate. So it was just a kind of a moment. I was like, oh, and now I look back at it. We've been very successful in RFPs following this model. Is what is the package that we can bring, as opposed to just what they are asking for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Henry Ford said, if you ask the customers what they want, they would just tell you they wanted a faster horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our industry is so guilty of that. It's a faster horse. Mm-hmm. That's you lost your keys. Well, we'll get out there and rekey it.
Yeah. What is the root problem that they're trying to solve is really
how
the thing
and
that we're
why.
trying to teach, and we still struggle with it, but that's the really point of the conversation.
It just takes experience.
I don't know that we made it through 5, but we did a lot. So, but from a time perspective, I'm supposed to be in a meeting, so I'm going to have to go. I've been. This is the first day back from a trip, so I'm been late for everything today. So, it has been fantastic listening through some of the moments that have shaped our careers and business to this point. We have. I've got to give you a tease for our next topic. Mm-hmm. So you guys ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm reading a book right now, and you guys probably, I'll just reference it. It is, let me tell you because I'll forget, The Ultimate Guide to Developing Leaders. And it is from a gentleman by the name of John C. Maxwell. I don't know if you've ever heard of him before, but super great author,
book writer.
Yeah, guy that writes books. But and it's got I've been thinking about this for months, and this book actually, I talked to my business coach about this, and then this book came up, and I started listening to it on this last trip that I was on. The concept for the next episode is going to be more of a brainstorming session, less of a talking through our experience. So we're all, again, in the same generation, and we've all tried to build some businesses of scale. The question is, what are we actively going to do to start to develop the leaders in our organization that will replace our current leaders in our organization? So the theory is you may have a general manager, an operations manager, or whatever now. How are they priming and mentoring folks inside your organization so that they can level up, and then that person can level up effectively? How are you training your replacement, and how are your replacements training them and mentoring them is kind of the concept. So we'll call it Who's Next, and identifying your next leaders in our next episode of the podcast. The other thing that I saw on your notes here, Lars, is a huge thank you to Alex and Yana Berger from B&B Locksmith out in San Francisco, out in the Bay Area. Lars and I happened to be in San Francisco for an evening in a layover before we headed out of town, and they were kind enough to come pick us up and take us to an amazing Italian restaurant and a great conversation around business development and some of the things that they're actively doing as well. So really appreciate that. It
was really cool. Alex, was a real, kind of bootstrap operation, kind of started right at the beginning and has worked his way up. And, the dynamic he has with his wife was great entertainment. And it was, that I walked out of that conversation. I was like, that's when you have a good partner in life, right? That it doesn't have to be in business, just having a good partner in life that pushes you when you need to be pushed and supports you when you need to be supported. It was pretty evident there that, it was, they were one and 1A. So that was a cool interaction.
Yeah, for sure. So appreciate that. And again, those that have been listening, thank you very much for your continued listenership. And also thank you for sending us feedback, messages on LinkedIn and email, letting us know areas of improvement and new topics that we can discuss, because that's always, we want to continue to do that and make this podcast more beneficial for you. So thank you for doing that. You can visit our website, unlockedpodcast.com. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening or watching to this. We have a new episode, man, trying to rush. We have a new episode out every Thursday morning for you. Thank you for being here today, and we will see you next time right here on the Unlocked Podcast.